In a world full of noise, two voices rise above the chaos. Ron and Brian. They speak truth. They stir thought. They accidentally help. News, nonsense, and necessary self-care. Join the cult of Ron and Brian. Because the work is so important.
All right, good evening, everybody. Hope you are ready to do the work. It is time for episode 358. It is 8 o'clock here on the East Coast. We are ready to start. Joined, as always, by the stepdad who rarely stepped up, my friend Brian. Brian, how the hell are you today, sir?
Apparently, I'm disappointing some of my stepchildren that I was unaware I had. I'm doing great. It is Sunday night. It has been a very relaxing weekend. Another rainy Pacific Northwest type weather for us here on the East Coast. Ron, I keep seeing things online that the last sunny weekend in the Northeast was back in November. Could
I
be
believe that.
Exaggeration. Feels like it. But yeah, I think we're going on like 8 weekends in a row where it is sunny. I've not even used the pool in my building.
You know what it doesn't
just
feel like yet? It doesn't
summer?
feel yet like hot podcaster summer.
Hot Podcaster Summer.
Looks like we may get some relief later this week. It's going to get a little warmer, going to get a little nicer.
Can you give me some relief?
So hopefully we get the relief that we are all hoping for. Brian, are we ready to get this going? I mean, it is Sunday night. It is the cult of Ron and Brian, and it is time for Drink of the Week.
Drink of the week.
Na zdrowie.
Salud.
Drink of the week.
Friendship.
Drink of the week. Drink of the week. Drink of the week. Drink
Brian,
of the week.
I've asked this 357 times in the past, but none more meaningful than right now. What are you drinking this week?
Ron, this week we are going all the way out to the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. We are going to Oscar Blues Brewing, and we're going to be drinking their Mama's Little Yellow Pils. This is a Bohemian Pilsner. And when you ask, what is a Bohemian Pilsner? Bohemian, according to the internet, Bohemian can refer to several things, including a person from Bohemia, which is a historical region in the Czech Republic, could be a person with an unconventional lifestyle or a style of dress and decor. In the context of beer, it describes a beverage that lives freely and creatively, often embracing artistic pursuits and rejecting conventional norms. As a style, it's characterized by a mix of eclectic elements, flowing fabrics, vibrant colors, and natural materials. This herbal lemony flavor mixes perfectly with the hops. It's supported by a clean honey and bread malt base, coming in at 4.7 ABV. Beer Advocate gives it a score of 82. Let's see what Brian thinks of Mama's Little Yellow Pils.
I mean, I've had a few of Oscar Blues different beers. I don't believe I've had that one, but their beers are usually fairly solid.
Ooh. I would actually describe this as a crushable summer beer.
Well, what kind of summer is it? That was your
Ron.
cue.
Hot Podcaster Summer.
Was that my cue? Did I just screw up?
I mean, I wanted you to say it, but that's all right. Anyway,
Like,
talk about the beer. How was it?
This is good. Okay, so it's not completely crisp and dry as most pilsners are. There is a fruity. Hold on.
Taking a second sip just to be sure.
There is a very strong fruity element, much like your personality in college. I'm going to say that this beer, I'm giving this a solid 8.7 out of 10. Glad I have a second one lined up. I will be drinking this beer for the rest of the night, Ron.
All right, one sip. Everybody knows the rules. An 8.7.
No,
Pretty impressive score.
No, don't. We do not support Portnoy here. That's not true. We used to support him and do those rough and rowdy fights. Those were fun. during the
Yeah.
pandemic. Ron,
Yes, my friend.
Ron, I don't want to rush
Yes.
through this show, but I
No.
do want to ask you a very important question.
Hit me up, my friend.
What are you drinking?
So, Brian, many times throughout the week, people will say to me, Ron, nothing good comes from the state of New Jersey. And I will say, nay. I'm like, there are a couple of good things from New Jersey. Number one, my wife. One of the best things to come out of New Jersey. Number two, the good people at Cape May Brewing Company. This is one that we have had on the show before. This is their Tan Limes. It is a Mexican-style lager with sea salt and lime. It is perfect at home or at your local cantina and is best paired with street tacos, brilliant sunshine, and close friends. It was a very crushable beer last year for Hot Podcaster Summer.
Hot Podcaster Summer.
And take a look at that nice, clear, refreshing.
Ooh.
It's like you took sitting on the beach. You're sweating. There's suntan lotion running into your eyes, the whole 9 yards. There's 5 different boom boxes around you playing 6 different types of music, and you are just trying to unwind from a full week of work. And you grab yourself a Tan Limes. Let's have a sip, shall we?
He takes a long sip.
Still good.
You knew.
I mean, honestly, and it's only 4.5%. So it
Good.
is crushable. You can put a few down and perfect for this upcoming summer.
Hot Podcaster Summer.
Love that sound effect. Love it.
All right. Well, you know what else it's time for, Brian? It's time for our beef of the week.
Ron and Brian's Beef of the Week.
Brian, what's bothering you this week? Talk to me, my friend.
Ron, you know what's bothering me this week? Me.
Wow. Again.
Me. I'm the problem. Ron, I am my own worst enemy. I'm gonna be we're gonna peel back the onion a little bit today. In
Sure.
terms of my beef of the week, I will be exposing something about myself that I don't know many people were aware of before. Ron, have you ever you're on LinkedIn quite a bit, aren't you?
I have my time. I have my times I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay, one of the things that I discovered recently on LinkedIn is that they've got these puzzle games.
Yes, they do.
Ron, I am embarrassingly bad at these games. I am so slow, and there's 3 that I primarily play. There's a game called Zip. I don't know if you're familiar, whether you've ever seen this, but it's basically a game where you run your finger over the screen. You're trying to connect numbers without missing any boxes, but touching all the numbers on the screen. Listen, consistently, the game has it tells you what the average score is. Consistently, I am at least double that time. I've got many errors that it publishes. And it's just slowing me down. I am consistently slower than others in my friend group and also at the University of Albany group.
You are.
I don't know if you're aware of
bring
this,
us down.
but on LinkedIn, you can actually see how other people are also participating in these games. I also regularly play a game called Queens, which is similar to Minesweeper, and also something called Cross
Queens.
Climb. I like to do a game called Cross Climb, where it's 6 words lined up so that one letter changes in each. You can reorder the words, but consistently my number is it's very low in comparison to how fast other people do. I'm dragging others down.
You are.
And I realize I'm the problem. And I know that there are people out there who are looking at their scores, who are sitting there comparing how their university compadres have done. And they realize that as a group, for instance, University of Albany, they see consistently that there are some graduates of that university that must be doing so terrible that they're just, dragging the average for that school down. And I'm that person. I am the person. And Brian the Drag, of course, JoJo knows me. It's embarrassing, Ron, and I feel terrible. And that's my beef of the week.
I mean, Johanna noticed I was preoccupied. I was pulling up some of your times from this past week because, I believe you were somewhat mocking my complaint the other week that people were bringing down the time
What?
average of, on the Zip game. But look at this, number 83, a minute 35 seconds it took you with 3 backtracks. Zip number 85, 9 seconds, no backtracks for me. You, 52 seconds. I was impressed with your one Queens game where it was almost 8 minutes that it took you to finish the game. Like, I almost wonder, did you pass out at one point during the game, or what happened?
I think I had played for a while and realized that I had screwed up along the way because I had 2 pieces that had 2 rows that had to touch, and I know you can't do that in the game, so I just cleared the board and started all over again.
Understood. Sometimes you have to listen. You have to wipe the slate clean sometimes and start from scratch.
Well, this is my apology to people out there. I'm fucking it up for the rest of them. Ron,
Right,
can I ask you a very serious question?
Of course you may.
What's bothering you?
So it's ironic, Brian. We don't talk about our beefs ahead of time, but sometimes our beefs kind of fall in the same ballpark. My beef is also with LinkedIn this week, but it is more with there is some guy who recorded a number of GIFs of himself that people use when leaving comments for other posts. Now, let me pull this. Have you ever seen these GIFs on LinkedIn where the guy will be like, that was great.
No.
Great news. But like the laziest thing, like rather than type, that was great, people are going to just use this guy's GIFs, and it's just consistent. And it drives me up. It's just one of those little minor things that just drives me insane, Brian. And I don't know why that is.
Because it's lazy. It's not entertaining. It's not funny. And that's you and I strive for a level of entertainment that it's significantly higher than that.
I like to think we raise the bar, and whatever it is we're doing, I like to think we bring it up a notch. We take it to a whole nother level. Would you agree?
I love that. I absolutely agree with that.
All right, fantastic. Well, let's take it to stories of the week, Brian. As our longtime listeners know, we like to grab some stories that might fall through the cracks. We bring them here. We make sure we cover them. Brian, what is your story of the week this week?
Ron, have you ever been at work and seen a friend who just seems to, kind of fall asleep throughout the day, and you're not really sure whether you should wake him up or not, or just let him sleep through the day?
I mean, only when I am having my my 10-minute power nap in my home office.
All right. Well, this is a word of caution that sometimes when you see somebody sleeping it off, it's quite possible that they're dead. My story of the week takes us all the way out to eastern Thailand, where a 42-year-old man was found dead in an internet cafe after spending the night gaming alone. Jirakrit Rangsri, a regular at the Chonburi Cafe, settled in on Saturday evening with snacks and soft drinks, ready to for what appeared to be a routine night of online gaming and movie watching. However, in the early mornings of Sunday morning, Jirakrit was seen resting with his head on his arm, and staff assumed he had simply fallen asleep. When the cafe manager arrived later on in the day, tried to wake him up, it was quite obvious that Jirakrit was not alive anymore. Something was clearly gone wrong. Emergency services were called. He was found unresponsive, slumped over in his gaming chair in front of a powered-off computer. Police captain, holy crap, I really should have studied this article more and realized that these are names Brian does not like to pronounce. Do you see this one that I'm talking about?
No, I haven't, but I assume if it's in Thailand, it might be a name you're going to stumble over.
Oh, lesson learned, Brian. Stay away from Thailand news stories. This person's name is Arafong. It's Arafong. That's the first name. Suwanajak. Oh, sometimes I do want to jack. It's Arafong Suwanajak of the Lam Chabang district station said, quote, "The deceased is estimated to have been dead for more than 6 hours because his body was already stiff." Well, sometimes when Suwanajak, your body does get stiff. No signs of assault were found. Ron, it is incredibly important that when you see somebody at work or in public sleeping, do not just assume that they are asleep. Walk over to them, give them a shake, put your finger underneath their nose, make sure they're breathing and that they're okay. This is a public service announcement of the Cult of Ron and Brian.
I mean, you're in HR, Brian. Have you ever caught any of your coworkers sleeping on the job?
Of course, absolutely. You
All
walk over to them and you start talking to them as if they were wide awake, and you just wait. You walk over, call their name, and you go right into a paragraph long. Knowing me, I improvise well on my feet, so I just walk up to anybody. I can find something to quickly talk to them about, and then I just sit there and I'm 3 sentences in while they're like open their eyes. Yeah, of course I found people sleeping. It happens quite often over the years.
All right. Good question. Does Matt fall asleep on the job? Surprisingly, no. He is so hepped up on cocaine that I think it's impossible for him to fall asleep. I
Sure.
remember that you guys were having a contest one time. I remember when you were seeing how long you could go without pooping, and he was seeing how long he could go without falling asleep. And I think he beat you. I think he went like a solid 5 days. And eventually you were like, you know what? I got to poop. I can't go any further.
Listen, if it makes you feel any better, a coworker and I are now at the point where we are taking a glass of Metamucil every afternoon after lunch.
Replacing
They're
that
stirring it
afternoon
up.
cup of coffee. Got to get your
Oh, no.
fiber.
The cup of coffee comes about 2 hours after that, but it is only, I would say it's a 10% embarrassment when somebody comes over to ask me what I'm doing as I'm stirring up my cup, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on over here?" I'm like, Metamucil. And then there's that thing is, we're talking about like kids who are in they're like mid-20s asking me this question. So like as soon as they say Metamucil, they automatically get weird because they think
Because they probably have no idea what it is. Like they don't remember the commercials from, it's not a thing they have to worry about for another 30 years.
They've never had to worry about a lack of fiber in the diet.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm just doing Metamucil at work.
All right, good for you. Hey, self-care is important, Brian.
Listen, I'm taking care of my body with probiotics. Ron,
Yes.
what's your story of the week?
So my story, right here in Montgomery County in Pennsylvania, where I live, police are warning teens about that a viral TikTok trend where they kick someone's front door is not only dangerous but illegal. Apparently, this past week in Conshohocken, a woman caught the prank in action on a Ring camera, showing a group of teenagers running up and kicking her front door, causing some damage. Lansdale Police Chief Mike Trail said his department has identified the teens involved and says parents have an obligation to monitor and set parameters for their kids. This one, I can kind of get behind some of the other TikTok challenges, like the no lacking, where you got to make sure you've got a gun on you, or the one where you hop out of your car while it's still in motion and do a little dance on the side of the road. But it seems like they're getting less and less creative. There was the Kool-Aid challenge where you just plow head first through a fence. Now you're just kicking a door.
Yeah.
Where is the imagination that we had as from our youth, Brian?
Sure. I mean, I remember growing up, we had the game of mug an old man. It was a fun little challenge. I mean, this was obviously before social media, but the game was if you saw an old man walking down the street, you had to run up to him, push him onto the ground, and then empty out his pockets before he had the ability to start screaming. I mean, it was a fun game. It was just fun.
There was that one. Upstate, we were a little, not as many people around. We couldn't really, mug people on the streets like that. But I remember, we would take a thistle and we'd use it as like a makeshift catheter, and like, it hurt like the Dickens, but it was fun all at the same time. It was friends hanging out, no cell phones, just vibes.
I'm sorry, but I haven't heard the phrase "hurt like the Dickens" in so long that just made me die. Hurt like the Dickens. Oh,
That's probably a phrase you can use in front of the
Oh my God.
20-year-olds at your office, and they'd have no idea what you're
oh!
saying.
If you don't think that I'm gonna use that this week. Oh, it hurt like the Dickens, and then
Hurt
just
like the
watch the room
Dickens.
get quiet. Oh, have you ever watched
Hey, you
sounding
kids.
videos? Have you ever
What's that?
watched sound? Have you ever watched the sounding videos?
I don't think so.
Oh, they're brutal to watch. They're brutal where they take like the little tube and they just start jamming in there for sexual gratification. And
Oh.
sometimes over time, the guys start using larger and larger tubes to make the hole bigger and bigger. Ah, some of those German guys have really done some major damage. Ooh.
I bet they. Well, yeah, some of those German guys have done some major damage.
All right. Okay. Good point. Valid. 6 million Jews. All right. There's a lot of
I mean,
damage
you
the
know.
Germans have done.
Just kind of spitballing here.
Well done. Well done. I like that one.
All right, what do we want to get to next? We have some stories. We have some quizzes. What do we want to get to tonight?
Champ, you decide where we go.
Well, you know what? Let's, surprisingly, we spent like 50 minutes doing our first 3 segments last week. We managed to get through it in only 20 minutes, so we've got plenty of time. But Brian, what are you watching?
Oh, okay. This week I have watched a lot of television. So hold on. I actually wrote it down this week instead of just off the top of my head. On Netflix, right off the bat, and I know you also watch this, so we can discuss it. Titan, the Ocean Gate submersible disaster. Listen, Netflix does documentaries incredibly well. If
They do.
you are somewhat familiar with the Ocean Gates Titan submersible, and you're into watching affluent white people die, this is, I feel like Stefan. If you're into that, this is the documentary for you. It spends a lot of time talking about the origins of Ocean Gate, the origins of the carbon fiber design, how we got to the point. They do not spend very much time on the actual, I should probably say, spoiler alert here, but the submersible implodes at about 3,000 meters into the water. Sorry
Right.
if you were unaware of that.
If you weren't around 2 years ago.
I know, wasn't paying attention that week. But they do not spend as much time on the last trip. They don't really talk about who was on it, what their origin story was, how they got there. It really is more about the lesson here that I think they really are trying to put. This is what happens when power goes unchecked. You had
That's a good assessment.
You've got a CEO who is hell-bent on the success of this project. You've got a culture where people who speak out about safety concerns are punished and fired, and people lost their lives as a result of it. That is the takeaway from this. Having just watched the documentary from the Discovery Channel, I believe, that's on HBO, that's also a great documentary. But Netflix does a superior job of the story. You watch this, correct?
I did, yes, agreed. I thought the Discovery was very broad. It was, it really was a lot of information about, to your point, like a lot of people outside of Ocean Gate giving their feedback. Like Netflix pays the money to get the people that like literally worked in the company. Like they're the ones definitely shelling out the cash for the Prime interviews.
Correct. And they do a great job of it. What else did I watch? I watched the documentary on Astroworld, Trainwreck, the Astroworld tragedy, which was the 2-day long or scheduled 2-day long festival put on by rapper Travis Scott. I'm not going to lie. Don't know one song that Travis Scott does. I know my nephew loves him. Nephew has seen him a couple times. Fortunately, my nephew never flew down to Houston, or as you like to call it, Houston, and took part in this. Apparently, this was a event that was heavily sold. I think they sold like 50,000 tickets per day. There was a design flaw in crowd flow towards different stages. The venue, if I remember correctly, lost control of the gates at one point, and people were just streaming in unticketed. And then people got trampled and died. I believe 8 people lost their lives, and several hundreds required medical attention. But that is not the thing that you are expecting when you go to a concert. Maybe if you're looking for a Travis Scott concert, you do understand that you're rolling the dice on that one. Ron,
Sure.
did you watch that?
I did. It was
Thoughts?
actually it was 10 people that died.
Okay.
8 people died that night, 2 after the fact in hospitals. And yeah, to your point, like what was interesting is, you mentioned they sold 50,000 tickets for the show. But they hadn't at that point done the set design of so by the time they did the set design, they saw, well, only 35,000 people are going to fit in front of the Travis Scott stage. So they went into this knowing that there was too many people.
Right.
While the concert was going on, concert goers are trying to get them to stop the show because people are literally being crushed to death next to them.
Sure.
They're talking to paramedics who they say if we have to do CPR once at one of these concerts, it's unusual. At one point, I think they had 5 or 6 people that they were, trying to bring back, from the dead, basically.
Yeah.
And then you see the text messages later on going back and forth with the Live Nation people, who I guess are the ones that had the power to shut down the show and still like let it go like another 20, 25 minutes.
Sure. Because what they said, what the people from Live Nation said was that they feared that there were going to be crowd problems in terms of safety if they shut off the show out of nowhere in the middle of it. Because the thing is, what I thought was interesting was the crushing of the people. Normally, you have to pay extra for that. However, on the dark web,
you got to get the VIP pass for that. Yeah.
It literally was one area of the crowd, and that in other sections of the crowd, there was not as much density of people within the space, so that the people on this side of the stage in the first 2 areas were being trampled and crushed to death, while the people behind them and on the other side of the audience, there were absolutely no difficulties because of the design of the flow of the crowd. More people wanted to get into that first area the way it was designed, that these people were dying and having a miserable time. These guys were having a great time. And the thing is, Ron, is, you and I are quite familiar with putting on a live show. Longtime listeners of the, remember, the Philadelphia Podcast Festival that we participated in. What was it, about 5 years ago? Maybe 4.
It was pre-pandemic, 2019.
So it's 2019. So almost 6 years ago, we put on that show. Listen, the number of safety meetings that we held earlier in terms of, how are we going to keep the fans in line outside of the venue prior to the show? We needed to make sure that we were being respectful of the neighbors. How did we make sure that only those who had purchased tickets to our live podcast were going to be let into the room? Some people were going to be seated, others would have to stand. There was going to be a backflow of people, who would have to watch it by a closed circuit TV in the sister venue downstairs. I mean, the number of hours we spent with the fire department, the various marshals, it is amazing that, for our podcast, we cared so much about the safety of the attendees. And here at Astro World, it seems as if it was an afterthought.
Yeah. Well, and you also don't forget you had to spend a lot of time touring the gentlemen's clubs around the venue that we are going to be performing at. And I didn't know why you did that, but you said it was important. You dropped $900 at each one. You said it was, worthwhile investment for the safety of the podcast and our fans. So I think just seeing what you went through on a personal level to ensure
Yes.
the safety of the people versus what a major corporation like Live Nation, who of course face no criminal charges.
None.
No one got brought up on any charges. They paid off all 10 families. I'm
Sure.
sure something that was just a blip on their financial radar that year.
Of course. The American culture where the corporation takes priority over everything, how the status quo needs to be maintained at all costs, regardless of the corruption and rejection of valuing the individual. It's just so sad to me to see at this stage.
Yeah, agreed.
And
That was
it's
the depressing thing because it was,
yeah,
they and the one guy they brought in the kind of the risk safety expert to talk about it.
sure.
And he said, he's like, there are some festivals that bring me in ahead of time to look
Sure.
through their setup. He's like, but unfortunately, most of the time I'm brought in after the fact, after some sort of tragedy has happened.
Sure. And the thing that I felt, with this was like people lost their lives because of a lack of planning. And there is, it boggles my mind. There is a responsibility of an organizer of event to take into consideration the safety of those that are attending.
Right.
I know when you put on your barbecues that you invite people over, we all have to wear floaties on our arms when we get in the pool.
Yep.
Various other things. We need to leave all of our handguns outside of your backyard.
It's a gun-free zone, Brian.
It's nice that you have those lockers outside where I could place my handgun, lock it up, so I know it's there, but I have my key. But it's just the idea of the level of assurances that you give people who attend your barbecues.
I mean, we wrap you in bubble wrap because we feel the possibility of you falling and breaking something is always there.
Very high.
We're always
Very
trying
high.
to prevent that.
Yeah. It's embarrassing, but it's fun. It's a fun time.
Yeah.
But however, so I finished watching that, and then you know what I did watch, and because I hype up a couple of things, but I also want people to know not everything I watch is good. Brian Wilson died. I think we're going to be talking about him later on in celebrity obituaries.
Sure.
But after he died, I started listening to some of the BC Boys music. Really loved Check Your Head. That album I think is classic. Nothing. You're not even going to say anything. Whatever, Ron. Not even paying attention.
I'm paying attention.
No, you're not. You're not paying attention. You would have frowned. Anyway, to make a long story short, so I watched the movie. Hold on, let me get the name of it. With John Cusack, Love and Mercy: The Life, Love, and Genius of Brian Wilson, where Paul Dano plays Brian Wilson while he's working on Pet Sounds, which is their opus, I guess you could call it. And then you got John Cusack, who plays Brian Wilson later on in life as he's struggling to, get his life back on track. Just a terrible, boring movie. You watch it and you say to yourself, Brian Wilson deserves better treatment than this movie. Acting was good, but it was just a terrible, slow. Paul Giamatti is wasted in this movie. Ron, what did you watch?
I watched. I didn't watch the Brian Wilson one, but I did watch the Ocean Gate one. And yeah, I think to your point, it was all about kind of unchecked power. Just Stockton Rush. I think there was articles that came out that claimed that Stockton Rush was suicidal in the Daily Mail.
Right.
And I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but I think he was okay dying for what he was doing. And I think what was scary is I don't think he cared if anybody else died along with him.
Yes. I think he saw himself as a trailblazer who was not going to slow down because others had concerns. I think he definitely put his thoughts and approach as being more knowledgeable. What is it? Hubris? Is that the term?
Hubris would be a good one.
He,
Yes.
yeah,
Not
it was
dumb.
just, anytime there was any type of comment made towards him or about his company as being, this isn't safe, this isn't a smart idea, this shouldn't be done. People said the level of anger and rage, he would fire employees if they voiced safety concerns. He would disavow and literally stop talking to friends if they didn't want to go back onto his submersible with them. Meanwhile,
Right.
everybody was saying to him, "This isn't safe. Like, you are putting your
Right.
life in the line." And he just sat there. He was just like, "They're all wrong. They're all wrong. I'm right. I know this better than anyone else. I'm right." And the part where it's just utterly, the part where it just becomes frightening was that despite all of this information being put in front of him, he decided he was going to sell tickets for $250,000 to people to go with him down into the water, where he had, I think they said he'd gone down like 82, 83 times on this dives on this boat, not all necessarily to the Titanic, but how often and frequent these dives were unsuccessful.
Yeah.
He even said in his marketing materials, "I'm not guaranteeing you that you're going to get to go down to the Titanic. I will take you out onto the water,
Right.
and if the conditions are right with the weather, we'll go down into the water, and if things go wrong in the submersible, we'll turn around and head back up. I'm not
Well, and
promising you."
they even interviewed that YouTuber who could have been on the final
Sure.
dive. Like,
Yeah.
he never got to take a dive. He was there. He was out for 9 days. They weren't able to dive at the Titanic site
Sure.
because of the weather. They tried to dive somewhere else. They had to scrap that. And so he realized, like, that could have been him. Like,
Mhm.
if that submersible only had one more trip left in it. But
Right.
there was, I mean, for as many people that fought against him, he had a few people that were just, enabling him, like the guy
Of
who
course.
died with him, that Paul-Henri Nargeolet, who was like a Titanic expert. Like, somebody, somebody they interviewed in the documentary went to Paul-Henri and said, this isn't safe. And he's like, "I've had a good career. If something happens, then it happens."
Yeah.
Like, all right, well, it's not just going to happen to you. It might kill other
Sure.
people along the way.
Sure. It's just wild to me. I would ask you the question, if you would like to go down there, if somebody gave you an opportunity, and I believe the answer is going to be yes, because you've had a good championship run. The belt's been the podcast championship belt has been residing in Philadelphia adjacent territory for a long time. You've had a great run. It's time for it to be over, right?
So I will say this, like, it combines like many things that I don't like. I don't like being in small spaces. I don't
Yeah.
like being in the dark. I don't like being
Yeah.
out in the ocean.
Yeah.
And I will say one thing that Netflix showed better than the Discovery documentary showed, like, there were the noises that they would record of the carbon fibers breaking due to the
Yes.
pressure of the water.
Correct.
And they touched on that in the Discovery documentary, and they played like a sound or two, but it really wasn't like, you heard a sound. But then they play the audio from inside of Titan, where these things are literally snapping, where you're hearing loud snapping noises, like 5, 10, 15 noises in a
Correct.
row, where this thing is literally snapping apart around you. And Stockton just feel like, it's noisy, but we're holding together. It's
Yeah.
like, well, you clearly weren't.
And he would be like, "Oh, that's not that's a scary one. That's a
Right.
scary one." It's like,
Yeah.
dude, that's not what you want to be saying. When you're, and it's he was prepared. He was prepared to die, and that's exactly what happened.
The only other thing I watched was a docu-series called Golden Greed: The Hunt for Fenn's Treasure. So this was about a guy named Forrest Fenn, who back in 2010 buried treasure somewhere out there, wrote a book about it, And then there was a poem within the book that provided 9 clues that would allow people to find where this buried treasure was, which was worth anywhere from $1 million to $5 million. And so it took 10 years for someone to eventually find it, but it tells the story about how it became popular, but then how people started to die because they are out. They're out exploring in like this, they talked about the first guy who died was trying to like find a spot in the Rio Grande. So he goes and he gets a raft from Walmart to go onto the Rio Grande with his dog. Thank God they found the dog alive. They didn't find his body till the following year.
Really?
But I want to say there was like 3 or 4 other people because, they're climbing mountains in like flip-flops, they're trying to go through the snow and like, like people who are not trained in how to go into these harsh environments. And then there's this one hillbilly family who like gets fixated on this boulder that they find, and they believe that the box is under this boulder. They work on the boulder for 2 years to find that there's nothing underneath it. But here's the thing. The Forrest Fenn was 80 years old when he buried this box. And he said, it's a place that an 80-year-old person would be able to get to. What 80-year-old man was lifting up a boulder that you had to blow up with dynamite and put it on top of a treasure chest?
What was inside the box again?
There was gold coins, there was jewelry, there was, valuables, precious stones, things. It was a whole mix of things. And so, you get to, they talked to a bunch of people that, got to know Forrest Fenn and were trying to find it. And then just some random individual who no one really knew ends up breaking the code and finding it during the pandemic.
Really?
And but it became like people became obsessed. They were stalking Forrest. They were stalking his family. There was this guy that thought his granddaughter was quote unquote the treasure. So he was going to kidnap her from her house. Like it's a crazy story. 3 episodes.
I think I need to go back. I watched the first episode, and I just remember being fascinated because the people they were interviewing, are in hindsight the kind of people that would hear a story on the internet about a guy hiding a box with some gold in it and be like,
right,
well, hot damn, I'm going to go find it. Yeehaw. Let me put my dentures in because it was frightening. I mean, it was just frightening. The people, frightening. I may have to watch this now. I didn't know people were dying.
Oh yeah, like there was police. There was a police chief in one of the towns who like asked Forrest to call off the treasure hunt. Have somebody go get the box, bring it back, and then he starts getting death threats from people because how dare you try and stop this? Listen, natural selection is there for a reason. It's gonna take people out.
Sure,
that deserve it.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, anything else?
That was all I watched this week. I started watching. It's a dubbed docuseries about cocaine smuggling at 30,000 feet.
Saw that.
What did you think of it?
It's subtitled. I didn't watch it. Okay. Well, let's peel the onion. Turned it on. It's a very fascinating story. It's about a couple French pilots that are arrested for smuggling cocaine into America, I believe it was. I made it through about 20 seconds of it when I saw that it was entirely in I think it was in French. Everybody was talking about Beaujolais and whatnot. And I said, oh, crap. Am I going to have to read the screen on this one? And turned it off and said, I'll come back to it at some point.
I gave it an episode. I don't know that I'll finish it.
I listen, man, my attention span is shit. And if you're going to tell me I have to sit there and read for 3 hours, it's going to be a brutal night.
It's going to be bad. It's going to be
brutal night.
Antonio Brown, our favorite former Albany Arena football co-owner, in the news again. Apparently, he is now facing an attempted murder charge following a shooting that took place last month outside of a boxing event in South Florida. He also started saying that he's left the country. He posted on Twitter the other day, hashtag love from the Middle East. So nobody really knows where he is in the world right now. But yeah, he's accused of firing at people that he claimed jumped him trying to take his jewelry. But then footage came out showing, I don't know. I think it's going to be tough to prosecute. But he also has to turn himself in. Like, he is definitely continuing to struggle with his mental health, I think.
Exactly. And speaking of struggling to struggle with mental health, he once stayed in Albany, didn't he?
He
Wasn't
did.
he at one of your
Who
hotels?
wants to do that?
Nobody. But Ron, I think we're skipping over one of the most important stories that we had lined up this week, and that is the fact that you left your Philadelphia adjacent fortress.
Yes.
You went out yesterday amongst the people, the DEI woke crowd, and you protested. Tell us about your time at the No Kings parade, I think you would call it, or a protest.
It's a protest. It wasn't a parade. People were standing around. I mean, obviously there was 2,000 protests nationwide. Big protests in Philadelphia. I think one of the bigger attended ones. People were out in force in Willow Grove. People were out in force in Jenkintown. Didn't really see anybody out in West New York, New Jersey. But we did have a protest at the Elkins Park train station. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to pack up my privilege in a little knapsack, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to see what's going on here. And it was, I will say this, for a small town, I want to say that we probably had between 300 or 400 people there. Well attended, lots of signs. Songs were attempted to be sung. People realized they didn't know the songs. It was less organized than I think some of the other protests were, but I think the intent was there. Some good signs, some good costumes, some well-meaning folks stood around with them for about 40 minutes. And then, Cheshire Brewing right there. So I went down and I had a couple beers before going home.
I figured. Yeah, I figured. Now, the question is, did you go with your lady or did you go by yourself?
So she was going to go down. It was, there was a threat of rain, and she also had to make a return to the Nordstrom at King of Prussia Mall. So I was like, you know what? You keep your priorities in check and you drive out to King of Prussia. I'll go fight for, the LGBTQ plus community,
Sure.
People of color, all of that. I'll take care of that for both of us.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, at any point, did you tell people that you are the podcast champion and that you act like a king? So therefore, you understand the draw of trying to be one?
I think what was important for me to remember was yesterday was not about me. It was about America. And that's what I spoke about, was America.
You spoke to people?
No, I did not. I really tried to avoid, I hate crowds and I hate people. So that just shows you how much the cause meant for me to go down there. Because there were times where the person speaking was like, turn to the person next to you and talk about what you're going to do moving forward. And I would just be like, and thankfully I was in a group of people. We were towards the back. Like, none of us wanted to talk to anybody. Like, we're just here to show our support. We don't want to have a conversation. I think my favorite part was they had handed out some song sheets. They were singing like, "We shall overcome. This land is your land, America the beautiful."
Really?
So this one woman all of a sudden thinks it's a good idea to get people to sing "Can You Hear the People Sing" from Les Mis. But she didn't really know the words, and I think she expected maybe the crowd would know the words. That fizzled out very quickly.
I would imagine. I mean, I assume nowadays everybody could have just pulled up lyrics on their phones and whatnot. But it's not an easy song to sing to begin with.
Now, granted, I can crush it because I have the time at Juilliard and some of the off Broadway.
Of course,
but again, did not want to make it about me. But again, it was very encouraging to see the community come out and support each other.
Speaking of community coming out and supporting each other, you know who did not come out and support the community? And that was Donald Trump's military
Oh my
parade
God.
in Washington, D.C. yesterday, which
How
was,
did that how did that cost $45 million?
I imagine it is the relocation of all this expensive military gear to then have to ship it back. I didn't watch. I'm not going to lie. I saw some photos in the news. I saw some videos. It looked like it was underattended. Honestly, I would say first off, Donald Trump putting together a public gathering in Washington D.C. We had a bad experience the last time he did it.
True.
So I was a little on edge at the thought of a lot of his supporters coming down to Washington D.C. So a very interesting comment for someone, which is, who on earth did he think was going to show up? Because the D.C. area is not known for its right wing pro military views.
Right.
There were huge stretches of that parade route you could see where there just was nobody standing there, and behind. It's also, I imagine, all the parade route was gated off and whatnot. That had to cost money, but also it seemed as if every aspect of it was sponsored by some corporation.
Yeah.
Welcome. The First Battalion from North Carolina is here, sponsored by UFC.
Car companies were sponsoring it. Banks, Walmart was a big sponsor. What everyone keeps pointing out is how poorly the marching was done, and so people speculating that that a lot of the military did not want to be there because normally when you're marching, it's in line, it's in step, it's a lot more crisp. Like they really just seem to be like going through the motions. Again, I've only seen a few clips, but it did not look anything exciting.
And at the same time, can't we as Americans just appreciate the fact that it was such a shit show? I mean, other than the fact that there was, how many videos have you seen so far on your social media algorithm of Trump falling asleep? Behind bulletproof glass. Keep in mind, we don't have a gun problem in America. That man is now always behind bulletproof glass when he's in front of a public where it's an uncontrolled populace. But there are the videos of him just sitting there like this. Like sleepy Don.
Joe. Yeah. I just liked how in Philly we managed to work Go Birds into a fuck Donald Trump chant. Always got to find that way to work it. It would just be like, the one side would say fuck Trump and then the other side would say go Birds. So it'd be
Go Birds.
Trump,
okay.
Go Birds. And then, you get the obligatory EAGLES.
You guys love your fucking Philadelphia Eagles. It is amazing. Like, even when they're not good. I mean, I know they won the Super Bowl last year, but even outside when they are just pathetic, as they've gone through stretches where they're not good, the fandom of the Philadelphia Eagles is so strong in that area.
And I think I told you because I was down in Philly on Saturday morning getting my hair cut, and I think I told you I have never seen them shut down parts of the city like the way that they did. Like they had garbage trucks, large construction equipment, and anything that would be immobile if a vehicle hit it, blocking roads, getting to the historic district. I mean, this wasn't even where the rally was going to be taking place. That was all on the other side of the city. And there was, I drove by this shop that I drive by every time I'm leaving the city when I leave the historic district. And there was probably a good 4 or 5 private security guards just out on the sidewalk in front of the store.
Really?
I've never seen that before.
Well, that's because Philadelphia people are savages and don't know how to behave in public. But also, it's just, nowadays it has become such a concern that anytime there is some type of public gathering, anybody could get in their car and just drive through. We had that New Year's Eve guy who drove down Bourbon Street in New Orleans, killing several people. There was a guy just recently in Liverpool during their Premier League championship.
Yep.
It wasn't. I don't think anybody in Fulham was celebrating. Correct, Billy. Fulham, that's the team he supports, I believe.
I believe so. I
Um,
believe.
they were not elite this year. But Liverpool, some guy got in his car, drove through. He killed a couple people. Like, it is now so easy in any kind of like gathering, a parade or whatnot. We in America have had it multiple times. There was that dude who drove through like a Memorial Day parade in Minneapolis, I believe, killed a bunch of people. It happened here in New York on Halloween, probably about 10 years ago. But anytime there's a public gathering, it's from a public safety perspective, you have to be concerned that any vehicle could just veer off the road and go right into the people to try to be used as a weapon.
Well, and we saw violence on Saturday morning, even before the protests, with the shootings that took place in, what was it, Minnesota, where a state representative and her husband were killed, and a state senator and his wife were shot in what were considered, targeted shootings.
Sure. And the guy's wearing like this bizarre mask.
He's wearing a mask, making him look like an old man. But he was claiming to be a police officer. Like, there was a warning that Minnesota had sent out, like advising residents not to answer their door for 911 or the police unless there were multiple officers present. That there was a guy there impersonating a law officer. We're not 100% sure what his motive is. He had paperwork for flyers for the No Kings protest in his car, but he also had a list of people, a hit list basically.
Mm-hmm.
He apparently was an anti-abortion activist, and I don't think they've caught him yet. I believe they arrested his wife, but I don't believe that they have arrested him at this point.
They detained the wife. I don't know that there's any charges out against her because I don't know what there's any proof, but they detained the wife. The police caught her driving with a couple family members. She had guns, she had passports, and lots of cash.
Totally normal stuff to be driving around with.
From a certain perspective, it looked as if she was ready to flee the area with some family members. Technically, I don't know that that's a crime to be driving around with money and passports. I don't believe it is, but it certainly is suspicious while he is still on the run. But what I thought was very ironic was the fact that here he dressed up as a police officer knocking on doors to gain access to these homes. Meanwhile, we have the federal government telling people that if an officer approaches asking you for identification to prove whether you are a citizen or not, absolutely sit there and comply 100%.
Not even an officer. If a guy who's not in uniform with a mask covering their face tells you to get in the vehicle, just do it.
Just get in the car because he's definitely a member of the government. So it feels like we're getting some mixed messages here as a population.
Let's try and lighten it up before the show runs too long here. There is a woman who recently took to TikTok. Her name is Christine Connell, talking about how some innocent behavior from her boyfriend led to a 7-year-long sinus infection. Doctors apparently were baffled by this because it had lasted so long. Eventually, and this will show you the power of the healthcare. Went 7 years before they decided to take culture samples from her nose. It was then that they learned that E. coli was to blame for her prolonged illness. And apparently, there was a period of time 7 years ago where she was immobilized after ankle surgery. And apparently her boyfriend has a bit of a farting problem. And so he was getting into bed, accidentally farted in her face, and so that is how they believe that she got this E. coli in her sinus passages, which led to this 7-year condition.
Ron, you always said that you like it when people fart in your face. That back in your single days, You used to go downtown into Philadelphia. You would then hire female companions to go to hotel rooms with you. You would lay on the floor. They would then squat down over your face and fart. You remember you telling me specifically you would take them out for a Texas style barbecue, heavy on the beans. And then afterwards, you would take these ladies back to the hotel rooms so that they could fart in your face.
I can't say that I recall that all that much.
As a lover of people farting in their face, like, was this something you were ever concerned about during that phase in your life? I mean, I know you don't do this anymore. You're happily married. You and your wife, very vanilla. You said that you got that out of your system years back. Now you are, you just love holding hands while sitting on the couch next to each other. But back in the days when you would pay women to fart in your face, like were you ever concerned with getting sinus infections from their E. coli escaping out of their colon, passing through their rectum, and then being breathed in by yourself?
Brian, if I will remind you, these are the kind of stories that we keep for behind the payroll. So maybe we'll discuss this when we do our After Dark for our Patreon supporters later today.
And if somebody wanted to become a supporter of our Patreon to gain access to this type of audio that we can't put out there for everybody on YouTube, we can't put it out there for people on Facebook. This is something we have to put behind the paywall for a secure environment where we can be ensure that those listening are over the age of 18. How would one go about supporting that? How would somebody get access to that kind of stuff, Ron?
Folks, just go to cultofronandbrian.com. That's the new web address. Go there, go in the upper right-hand corner, click on to become a patron, and join at the $10 a month level or higher. And you'll be able to join us for our live After Dark, which will be taking place in about 28 minutes. But in the meantime, Brian, as we mentioned at the top of the hour, this is Father's Day. And in conjunction with Father's Day, the country's most prolific baby daddy is calling it quits. I don't know. I know you're a big fan. I'm a big fan of Ari Nagel, better known as the Sperminator. He is the father of 176 kids. He apparently provided his seed to complete strangers for 17 years across 20 states, 10 countries, and 5 continents. He is hanging it up because he turns 50 in August, and recently began dating a 22-year-old he met at an art gallery.
What?
Apparently she doesn't want her own children, ironically enough. But he has decided that he is, there's 5 more of his children due this year. He has never charged a woman for his donation, enabling them to avoid sperm bank costs, which can run into the thousands of dollars.
Really? He's never charged. Maybe he is doing the work. I think he's doing the work.
Yes. His first child, Ari Jr., was born in 2008 to a lesbian mom who posted an ad for a donor and wound up having sex with Nagel. He said, quote, "We conceived the old-fashioned way," adding that he tries to do the deed as quickly as possible to reduce any lesbian's discomfort. I know that's the excuse I always use. I just want to get it done quickly for you, hon. I don't want you to be uncomfortable.
Oh boy!
Well, we salute you, Sperminator.
Yeah. Ari Nagel. And I believe he is the follower of the Cult of Ron and Brian of the week. I will work on getting a better name for that.
What other stories do we have? Let's talk about this, Brian. This is a story from the bastion of journalism that is the New York Post. Brian, do you urinate in the shower, Brian?
Not regularly.
Okay.
But if I find myself in the shower with the urge to urinate, I will go. It's not something that I normally look forward to or strategize over. However, I will say this: as I have gotten older over the last several years, the period of time I have between being getting the warning sign of, hey, I think I have to go to the bathroom, and from the time I really need to go to the bathroom, that time is getting shorter and shorter, much like my penis.
Sure.
It's not like the old days where I would, be like, I think I have to go pee. But then I'll just hold it in. I'll be getting to work in an hour, so therefore, I'll go to the bathroom when I get there. Now it's kind of like if I feel the urge to go, if I wait too long, I'm going to pee myself. I mean, I think we all remember episode 68 called "Brian Pees Himself," where I did urinate inside my pants. However, so I'm going to say, like, if I'm getting in the shower and I'm just starting my routine, I will let loose in there.
Well, you join about a quarter of Americans that say that they pee in the shower, but a healthcare expert in a TikTok video said that you should not pee standing up in the shower or anywhere for that matter, especially if you are a woman. It says, ladies, you are training your bladder it's okay to empty while standing. This could cause bladder leakage. Another doctor, Houston-based OBGYN Emma Quershley, said it's not very hygienic, but more important than that, it will destroy your pelvic floor, and it may also create mental associations where you hear water running and all of a sudden you need to run to the bathroom.
Really? Well, hasn't that always been the case? That when you hear water running?
I would think so. Now, apparently it is also, it's dangerous for men as well, since the pelvis and spine muscles are most relaxed while sitting. Sitting is the most efficient way of peeing, which we've always kind of made fun of you for sitting down when you pee, but it just makes sense, I guess. Standing while urinating also puts men at risk for benign prostatic hyperplasia, which occurs when the prostate gland and surrounding tissue expand, obstructing the urethra.
Really? Again, as JoJo said, this isn't even after dark, people. We are approaching the line of what we are no longer comfortable talking about. So it does sound like it's moving forward. I should step out of the shower and use the toilet and then go back into the shower.
Here's a fun fact, though, Brian. In Germany, those who don't stand to pee are called Sitzsprinkler, a slur implying that they are, quote, wimpy or effeminate.
There you go. See, that's why I always stand. I have to stand, Ron. You know that.
All right. But again, Brian, this hour just flies by. I look into your eyes, and all I know is an hour goes by, and I just don't even know. I've lost myself.
Listen, this is the fastest hour of my week. It's like two old friends sitting talking, but without even realizing just how much entertainment we are creating for the masses.
Well, I think people are entertained. If you're joining our Patreon, you'll be entertained even more than we're able to do on this free set. So, Brian, what do you say we wrap this up? We get ready for After Dark, and everybody else can get ready for their Monday morning commute. But we appreciate all of you joining us here tonight. Brian, any words of wisdom before we head out?
Keep your head up, keep fighting, and never give up.
There you go. Can't say it better than that. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us for the latest episode of The Cult of Ron and Brian. A non-tax deductible contribution can be made by subscribing to our Patreon. Visit cultofronandbrian.com and click on Become a Patron. We'll see you again next week.